Welcome back to a new AI tutorial. In this video, we are going to be talking about how we can integrate FastAPI with OpenAI API. We are going to build our AI app and we are going to write the API for it. By the end of this video, you are going to be able to create your own AI API endpoints. Let's start coding. Okay, I'm going to be using VS Code, but you can use any code that you want. And after opening the project, we are going to start with creating a Python file, like let's say app.py. And in here, what we are going to do is we are going to start with our imports. So I will say from FastAPI, import FastAPI and HTTP exception. Next up, I will say from Pydantic, import base model. And after that, what we are going to do is we will say from .environment import load.environment. We will say import OpenAI and we will import the operating system. So in here, we are going to use FastAPI for creating our API. We are going to use Pydantic for data validation. It's going to be for the data type that user is going to send the prompt, and we are going to use the .environment for just loading our environment variables from an environment file, and we will use OpenAI for the API call, and we will use operating system for loading our environment variable in our app. And for the libraries of this video, I'm just going to say show OpenAI, and we need to install this specific version for the codes in this video because OpenAI will change its API with different versions, and I'm recording this video with this version because if they change the API call structure and if your version is not compatible, like you have a newer version or older version, maybe it cannot work. That's because installing this version is the safest path. So what we are going to do on the installation side, I will say pip install, and you need to install FastAPI, uvicorn, python.environment, and OpenAI, but 0280, like this. When you make this run, you are going to be ready for this video. Also, you need to say pip3 if you are using Mac. If you are using Windows, you can directly call it with pip. And if you already installed OpenAI, you can just do pip uninstall OpenAI. And after that, you are going to be asked, do you really want to uninstall the OpenAI? You can just press Y and press enter for uninstalling it. Again, if you are using Mac, you will say pip3 instead of pip. Okay. After these imports, you are going to be ready to go with the installations. We don't need anything else. Okay, we have our imports ready. Right now we are going to create an environment file. So I will say .environment like this. And in here we are going to enter our OpenAI API key for using the API. So what we need to do is we will say OpenAI API key, and this is going to be equal to your key that you are going to take from the OpenAI Playground website. As I remember, they gift you $5 when you register, but I'm not sure if it's still claimable, but you can just load a balance like 50 cents or $1. We are not going to spend more of that in this video. Like it's going to be like 5 cents or 10 cents, but if they are just gifting free credits, you can just use that. What you need to do is you need to open your account, and from your API keys, you need to get a key, starts with SK, and after pasting your key in here and saving the file, you are going to be ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the API key in here and I'm going to save this file. Then I'm going to be recording in our Python file in a minute. Here I have my key ready on the environment file. So we can continue with creating our API. So what I'm going to do is I will say load.environment. So we are going to load our API key from the environment file to the script. And next up, we are going to initialize the FastAPI. So I will say app, and it's going to be equal to the FastAPI, and I will say title FastAPI integration of OpenAI API. So it's going to be our title in here. And in here, I'm going to set my API key like OpenAI dot API key is going to be operating system get environment, and I will pass OpenAI API key like this. Okay, next up we need to create the base model for the request model that user is going to send their messages in that format. So I will say class, and I will say prompt request, and I will say base model, and I will say prompt is going to be string. So we are just going to give its data type, and it's enough. Also, we need to use capital letter for the M, and it's ready right now. One good thing about FastAPI is it directly takes the data schema from here, so you are going to be able to see this in the Swagger documentation, which FastAPI automatically creates. I'm also going to show you our endpoint and how it looks like in our next phases of this video. So right now what we are going to do is we are going to create an endpoint for user to get results from the OpenAI API that we are going to make an API call from. So we will say app.post, and this is going to be the main method for users to get the LLM response. So we are going to say asynchronously define, actually we will say SNY, yes, generate text, and I will say request is going to be the prompt request that we give in here, and we are going to say try. So it's better to do this with try and except, because if an error comes up, we are going to just give like error details to developers to fix it. So I will say response, and it's going to be OpenAI chat completion create, and I will say model is going to be, let's say, GPT-4o mini, and for the messages I'm going to say like I will firstly pass the role of system, and we can give a system prompt that we want, like you can just change it if you want. I'm just going to use the general default, like I will say content is going to be you are a helpful assistant, and next up what I'm going to say is I will say role here, and it's going to be user, and the content is the place that we are going to give the user prompt like this. And in this way we are directly taking the prompt from our class that we pass in here. Okay, now here our API call is ready, and we are going to catch the answer like response, and we are going to go into the choices from the response. It's the classical OpenAI response format. We will take the first one, next we will take the message, and then we are going to take the content from it. And at the last place we will say strip like this, and it's going to be ready to give to the user. So next up I will say return response answer, and here our API is going to be ready on the try side. Now we are going to write the except, but before that you can change the system prompt as you want. Like this is where you are going to specify your API, like let's say you're a helpful assistant, and I'm going to say your name is, let's say, I don't know, helper, like this. Okay, so I'm going to ask what's your name on the testing phase, and you are going to see how we can change the app like this. So now on the except side I will say except exception as E, and I will say raise HTTP exception status code of 500, and I'm going to give detail like string, and I'm going to pass the error message in here. Okay, awesome. Now our endpoint is ready, and if I just go to the local host with running it, now I can use my API, but I'm just going to define a root point here. So I will say app.get, and when the users go to the base address, they are going to see right now the message I will give in here. I will say return, and I will say messages and welcome to the API, and we can just add this in here. Okay, our root is ready too. Now here is our API. It's this easy to create. So how we can test it right now? We have it ready. I'm just going to say unicorn app reload like this. Unicorn app 2 dots app, and we are going to pass the reload like this. And with reload option, let's say that we want to make changes and test the API. We don't need to even stop the API. We can make the changes, and when there's a save in the file, it's just going to get automatically updated in the API. It's just going to restart itself. Okay, let's make this run. So here we can see that it says we watch for changes in these directories. So if we just want to change something in here, we are going to see that it's going to just automatically restart itself. So let's do that. Your name is helper. I'm going to just delete the dot in here, and when I save, we are going to see that it's going to just reload itself. And I'm just going to add dot again, and we are going to see it restarts itself. Awesome. So now I'm going to go to this address, and I'm going to be recording from my browser. You can directly go to this address for reaching to the API when you start it. So I'm going to be recording in the localhost right now. Here we are in the localhost address, and here we can see our message, welcome to the API. And for reaching to the API documentation, which FastAPI automatically generates, you can just call the documentation like this with docs, and you are going to see the Swagger UI in here. It says FastAPI integration of OpenAI API, which was the title we gave, and we have the root in here, the get method, and here we have the post method for users to get responses from. So let's test it out. I will say firstly test, and let's see our response. In here, after you say try it out and you just change this value in here, you can say execute, and we are going to get our response in here. Here is our response. It says hello, it looks like you are testing out the chat. How can I assist you today? Awesome. So let's say what is your name, and we are going to see our system prompt works like this in here. It says my name is helper. If you don't specify that, you are just going to get classical answers just like from the ChatGPT UI. But like this, you can just change your app. You can even send chat history for getting conversations. Okay, I want to test, like, let's say, explain me the game chess. And let's see our response in here. So it's generating. Since it's going to generate more tokens, it can take some time. Yeah, here is our response. It explains the game chess. Okay, I just want to test the error message logic we defined with the except block. So instead of sending text, I will just send integer like this. And after saying execute, it says unprocessable entity, and it says input should be a valid string. Okay, awesome. Everything is working successfully, and from this hosting, people can reach to the API that you created with FastAPI and get messages from the OpenAI API. Also in here, you can see that with Pydantic and FastAPI, you can get the schemas easily like this. Awesome. Okay, I'm in the code editor, and let's see the last logs in here. We can see that we can just view what we are turning, like 200, 200, 401, 200, 200. Like we can see the responses that the API generates from the logs in here. Like at the last place, we tried an integer and it didn't work out, and it passed 422 error. Okay, now I'm just going to summarize what we are going to do if we want to create an API again, and then we can finish the tutorial. We just need to import these for this kind of use case, but if you have more complex code, like if you are just going to work with numbers, stuff like that, you can add extra imports. But again, FastAPI for the API, Pydantic for the data validation, and data environment for loading our API key from the environment file, OpenAI for just using the API call. But again, with this format, I'm just going to type it's 0280 the version, and we have the operating system in here for loading our API key, And here we firstly initialize the FastAPI, then we just set our API key like this, and then we create the prompt request class like this, and we create our endpoint for generating text from the OpenAI API like this. We define the model and messages, and we set answer and we return the answer. In the case of there's an exception in the API code, we are just returning the error message, and we just define the root address like this for users to get the welcome to the API message for the base URL if they don't go to the endpoint address that we defined in here. Thanks for watching. Let's get to the outro. Thanks for watching this tutorial. I'm sharing new data science videos every week on my channel. You can subscribe for more videos like this. Also, I have an AI tutorials playlist where I have more than 20 videos just like this one. You can reach that playlist from the cards of this video or from the links in the description. Have a great day.